I'm going to talk today about building a monitoring tool um, and the sort of that I went through to do that. And hopefully these are generic enough that you can reuse them for your programs as well. So this is I, I was inspired by VMstat and IOStat. And I worked at Oxide here, and among the many things I do, I work in the storage layer. And I really wanted to know sort of what was going on with the storage software. Um, and specifically, I sort of have this like questions like, what's the overall health of what's going on? What's the current activity in the storage layer? Were there any problems in the past that maybe missed? I want to be able to observe a lot of processes at the same time and potentially different things within a single process. So these are sort of my high level goals that I had. Um, so a little bit of background to help you understand some of this. The Crucible is a storage layer. It consists of an upstairs and three downstairs. It's a creator library consumed by our hypervisor, Propolis. And we can have multiple hypervisors running in the same system and multiple instances of Crucible inside a single hyper. So that sort of sets the sort of stage of what I want. I'm now gonna switch over to the terminal. Um, so in order to make this monitoring tool work, we put a bunch of dtrace probes using the USDT stuff talked about earlier into Crucible. So this is a libraries file for Crucible. We have a whole pile of probes here. I have the benefit of sort of knowing a little bit about dtrace before we started writing the code, and so I put probes all over the place for everything. I like to write a lot of bugs, and in order to make them not so hard to find for other people, I put a lot of probes there behind to help, sort of leave some breadcrumbs there. But basically, I I put probes all over the place. And the specific one I'm going to talk about here is this up status probe that we put in using the very meaningful name of ours. Um, I called it R because the example in USDT uses R. I just haven't bothered to change it. Um, so if I look at this R here, the struct, what I'm doing here is basically I've collected a whole bunch of state that I may want to
Not getting output.
or not.
Yeah.
It's not updating. It's one of those weird masters.
Process not. Try it unsharing and resharing. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sometimes Bendeck or person systems.
I can post as well.
You can either have working audio or you can have you do the terminal. Oh, there we go.
Hold up.
It is moving now. Like if you move your cursor. Yeah, okay. Great. I fixed it. Good job.
Excellent. I didn't want to read this out loud. Obstruct hard. Open. That's all. So basically what I have here is a structure that has a bunch of information in it that can tell me some information about what's happening in the storage layer. And then we have a probe that inside Crucible, there's this main control loop to go around. And every so often you'll say, okay, go fill out the structure. And so this gives me sort of the basis on which I have the information in my program. Now the trick is, how do I get this information out of the running program into something I can use? So let's switch over to we'll talk about. So I'll do that. Yeah. So actually what I want to do first is show you the result, and then I'm going to walk you through how we create it. So if I switch to the other one, also updating. Yeah. If I run this gives me a nice little summary, and I'll explain in a second what all the things are, but this gives me a nice little summary of what's going on my system. I have a column that's the process ID. I have a column that's the session ID. And then I talked before about the three downstairs that are publishable. This is giving me a status on each one. I have a counter for the number of, not quite IOs coming through, but number of jobs that we've created. I have a delta for how many since the last time we printed a line. And then these are a bunch of additional statistics that are sort of specific that I care about, but um, basically giving me a quick summary I can look at, fits in a small column with, and I can look at this quickly and go, yeah, looks, everything's good, or I see some problems right away. So you see the structure on the right side here. Let's start with a simple examples. A really simple probe where I'm just getting that up status and I'm printing it out. And if we come over here and I run that, we can see here's the probe name, and then here is that giant blob of data that is basically the structure that I had in my program. And we can make this a little better. I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. So what I'm going to show you here is the step-by-step of my D script as it becomes the final thing you saw on the left. So now I'm telling it to be quiet, and I'm going to use the JSON ability to read in that giant blob and just give me the OK field. If we look at the output over here, you can see there was an OK that was then the entire structure. So if I run those two, takes a second, probe fires, we get our big blob. Now, some of you may notice this is just a giant JSON blob. And if we wanted to, and your system had it, you can do something like pipe that to JQ. If you wanted to pipe that to awk, and those of you who want to join the awk conference, you can now go off and this is a great awk problem too. So you could do all this in awk. You could do this in JQ. You could write a program that consumes this JSON blob and does things with it. So there's lots of options you have at this point. I'm going to continue down the pure dtrace path and show you how I did it dtrace, but really the door is open for all sorts of stuff. So I think that was all for two. So, okay. So now let's go to the next sort of level in this. I want to say, instead of printing everything, just give me this one field in my giant blob. So if I run that one, so we got two things going on here. The first one is, if you notice, I no longer am exiting at the end of a probe hit. I'm just letting it run, and I'm printing just the next job ID. So what's happened is there's multiple processes running on the system, and they've all hit this probe. And so I'm getting the output from all my different processes as they hit it. So let's continue the evolution board. If I look at the fourth closing, now I'm going to print the process ID, which we have as PID available in dtrace, and then the job ID. So if I run that, starting to look a little more sane, maybe. Now you can see process IDs are repeating. We're getting our job IDs. But you notice there are 2 14776s here with different numbers. So that's the same process, but multiple instances inside that process of this probe fire. So I want to further give us a little more information about which one of those instances I'm looking at. So if we look at number 5, now I'm doing another little trick. Let's run the output. And we'll talk about it. So I'm doing a couple things here. First, I'm pulling out the session ID field into this full session, and I'm giving this a self because I don't want multiple probe firings to clobber this variable. And if I have a lot of processes and a lot of sessions, they'll stomp on each other if I'm trying to do something inside the probe level. So this self tells it only for view. So I take my session ID and then I strip off the first 8 characters of it. And then I'll print that self session ID as a string. So now I've got my process ID, my session ID, and the specific variable, the next job ID. So obviously, you look at these numbers, they go by quickly. It's sort of hard to tell. Are things changing? What's happening? Maybe the next thing to do is give ourselves a little delta on what has changed. Um, Switching over to my next dtrace 6. So now we're doing a bunch more stuff. I'll run this on this side, and then we'll talk about it. So now we can see for each one of my processes, my session, we get the current counter and we get the delta since the last time this probe ran. And there's a couple of things I had to do in my descript to get this to work. The first is I have this associative array that I'm now using to store my part of getting a delta is knowing what the previous value was. So I have this associative array I'm using, and it's indexed on the session ID. So that's the most unique thing I have. But I don't know my session IDs when I first start out. So in D, you can say, I just want to init one of these, and then the rest will work when I actually try to use them. So this sort of is a way to like initialize everything to 0. Then I'll have, so another trick that we're doing in this is I'm doing my same things before. I'm getting my job ID, but I'm using this function to convert it into an integer that I could then do math. Before it was just the string that I was printing. Now I'm printing this as an integer, and then I can do math on it. And then we have this sort of logic, not print a big number at the first time through. All right, so that's number 6.
One question.
Sure.
So you've used a thread local variable there with self points to. Could you use a clause local variable this points to? Do you need that outside the clause?
Outside the, like, between,
Like, are you
it only matters for this printing.
right? Yeah. So you use clause local variable if you wanted to.
Okay. Is that this?
That's the this points to.
Okay.
Yeah, it's slightly less enabled probe effect.
Actually, I had this before and I changed it to self this morning, but whatever. What the question was I'm using self here, and I could also use this as a way to even further restrict the scope of this variable. For this predictive, I only care about it to print the message, and once this probe ends, then it's
So
all right. So now let's add some more columns to the end of our output. We'll run that close here and then talk about it. So if I don't, I think I'm just going to guide this now. Now we have the same start, and I'm doing a couple more things in this case too. I'm now printing connections, ELR and ELC. These are sort of things specific to Crucible. But one thing I'm doing is I'm reading 3 of them, converting them into integers, and then adding them all together. So I get like a little summary. So instead of having to print 3 different columns, I just print one, and I can look at these columns and say, well, it should be three. And if it's not three, then something's going on. And this is the other columns tell me, well, this is what we want. But we'll get to that in a second. So I think that's all for us. Yes. So we've added those columns. So another thing that's going on is I have these three downstairs that are part of my upstairs, downstairs, my crucible, my storage layer. They have a state in them. And I want to see what that state is, because that state tells me information about what's going on in the system. So it means this guy. Let's take a look at number page here. So what I'm going to do now is in that giant JSON blob, I have the state. I was all pulling symbols. I did that. I did that. I actually want to print the states of each one of these downstairs and put that in my output. So if I run number 8, it's good. I now see the state, but I'm really starting to stretch my column width. That state value there, active is actually one of the smaller ones. There's some that are bigger, and it's going to mess up all my columns. Things won't line up. I hate that. So I have another trick that I stole from Josh that we can use. Let's go to number 9 and see what sort of shenanigans I mentioned here. So go down here to where the printing is. I'm now using D0, D1, D2. And if I go up in order to get that, here's the magic. So I'm taking my state, copying it out, and I'm using this inline as sort of like a lookup table. And I say, if I want index that matches active, give me back active. And if I want new, then put new. If it's live report ready, print LRR. So this little shenanigans allows me to print and keep my columns all pretty, all aligned. Now we see the active is replaced with act. So this is just another trick to help you display your information in a more concise way. And then all that's really left here, there's a couple more tricks. But basically at this point, the only thing left to do is give myself a little header, which I'll do now in the final. And if you remember, this was the original script that I ran to begin with. And if I run it over here, up. Control E. So now we get another trick. I have this variable that all of the probes we will look at. And then I go down to the bottom and I say, if the show variable is greater than 20, then print a header. And then in my probe, when my probe fires, every time it fires, I add one of its variable. So this is just a little sort of trick to get this nice column to come out, or the nice header to come out every 20 lines or so. So when you get your header, you get your information. It's sort of made it concise. You get all the columns to line up. And I think that was all I really wanted to share. Yeah.
That is awesome. Someone in the chat is asking if you can emit ANSI color codes. The answer is yes. And, well, I was just going to say, it's not totally clear to me that this Paul Smith character isn't actually an alt.
New account created today.
Exactly. Just a little bit suspicious. What a handsome question. Tough but fair, says Adam. Wow. Used ANSI.
Yeah, like in the Java 1 keynote 1,000 years ago, we used to show the difference between userland and Java, system calls and kernel. And it was how we made like dtrace sufficiently visually appealing for a keynote, let's say.
So there was one other little thing I wanted to, but I just actually figured out this morning. Is this what we have it? Yeah. So there's one more little trick here too, but I also wanted to show that just about adding it on here. So right now, there's this thing called target, which is if I'm on over here and running my dtrace tool, I can say, run this for process ID, which what was the one that had multiple 147. Let's run here. 14776. So if I give it this -PR, what that tells this line here is that only if target is there, not 0, only show things that match this PID. So my same script I can have run for everybody, or if I give it a -P option, it'll only run for that one process. So now I can well, I see there's a problem with this one system. Let's focus in on that and see what's going
Hold on. How do you do that?
on. So this, I say if target is 0 or
Oh, okay.
target is hit. And if I don't give target anything, then it defaults to 0. So then it does everything. But if target is on 0,
Always enable it's you always enable everybody. Yeah. I got it. Yeah.
all right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool stuff, Alan. Thank you.
This is all, I didn't have to talk all the details because in your presentation, Adam, I'm using all the same stuff that Ben showed that you showed. It makes it really easy to add probes. And I think knowing how easy it is to add the probes, I just throw them everywhere. And it,
And you said, so if you want to hear more from Alan on Crucible, you join us on Oxide and Friends. We had a great episode on Crucible. And we use dtrace for Crucible all the time because we've been just very, and also one of the things that's been great about the USDT support and with all the rich Crucible support is when debugging a problem, it's so easy to add probes just as part of debugging something.
yeah.
You add a probe, recompile, throw it on there. And it's like in a way that I've not actually, with USDT, I've not been able to do that prior to the bus support.
Yeah.
Great.